Hello friends, it is 2025, which is weird and I don't know how I feel about it. But I wanted to do a little 2024 recap video that I've seen other businesses doing, so I thought that sounded like fun. A lot of other small businesses will kind of add it'll be like revenue and like money centric. I'm not gonna do that, just because talking about money still isn't my thing. I don't think it'll ever be my thing. But also I am not a thriving business. So I just I don't have any financial business advice to give or information to share really. So that's not really the focus of what I'm gonna talk about. When I do talk about numbers, it's gonna be orders, number of orders, not revenue amount. If you don't know me, my name is Sam. I started my small candle business, the Merry Wick, at the beginning of 2021. I started making candles like many people during the pandemic. So yeah, it's really crazy to think that I've been doing this for 4 years. I don't understand where the time has gone, and it doesn't feel real to this day. General summary, 2024 was not the best year in my life. I struggled a lot with mental and physical health for most of the year. Gosh, there's a squirrel. Hi, squirrel. Oh, wait, I think he's gonna eat from the feeder. What are you doing? He is gonna go to the feeder. I'm gonna film it on my phone and then insert the footage. Look at him. He's just having the best time. This window's too dirty to see out of. I could literally watch this all day long. Okay, I'm back. What was I saying? 2024, not good. Not good personally, and honestly, in comparison to other years, not good business-wise either, which I think a fair amount of people felt this year for many reasons. I know it doesn't make any sense, but I've always kind of been one of those people that is stuck in the mindset that the way the year starts is very indicative of how the year's gonna go. Again, logically, I know that makes zero sense, but it's like a mental habit I've had a hard time getting rid of my entire life. So 2024, I mean, technically the rest of the year didn't start off well. I've been having a lot of physical health problems starting mid 2023 that it kind of kept getting worse, and then somehow I let myself go to Vegas for the last New Year's, and knowing that that kind of outing is not for me. And some parts of it were fun, but it eventually did end in a panic attack. So yeah, the night before New Year's Eve, I don't know what happened. I just completely lost it. Was okay, hopefully I'll feel better tomorrow. I did not. I barely slept. I just felt the morning of New Year's Eve, I was I cannot be here. I have to go home. I just felt trapped and was scared, as one is in a panic attack. So we left the trip early. We were with friends, and then we spent New Year's Eve and New Year's Day alone. When I have a panic attack, I never know if it's gonna take me a couple days to get over it, or a couple months, or a couple years. Thankfully, it hasn't been as bad as a couple of years for a very long time, but it was a couple months until I started feeling a little bit more normal. But yeah, so the start of the year was stressful. I feel sometimes when I'm very stressed out or I've had a shock or something, I will dive into a project because it will take up all of my mental and physical energy, which would otherwise be spent freaking myself out. So usually if I jump into a project, at least I have some amount of a distraction, but then I get a little bit obsessed with the project. Sometimes that doesn't help. I feel the project was I'm just really gonna make the business work this year. I'm gonna try harder than I did last year, try to invest more into the business, just really go for it. And many of the times I've done that, it didn't last very long before I just felt completely beaten down by being a small business and just being a human. So in general, I feel I started the year with business-wise very high hopes, and then more physical stuff started going on, which then turned into mental things, and everything just kind of declined over time. So in making this video, like the recap, it's very interesting because I had to actually go back and look at actual numbers rather than feelings. Because I think most of the year I felt like a failure and I felt like I really wasn't trying hard enough. And that feeling kind of just kept like compounding on itself of like just a lot of like negative self-talk and negative beliefs about what I was capable of and where things were going with the business. And like an internal perspective, it just felt like the year was business-wise like one big failure. Now that I actually went in and looked at the numbers, no, my business did not do as well as previous years, but my orders were actually kind of consistent, like more consistent than I thought they were, in the sense that I hate using business terms, but it's gonna happen. For Q1, I got 21 orders. For Q2, I got 20 orders. For Q3, I got 24 orders. And for Q4, I got 42 orders. And that like ratio is pretty standard because most businesses make more sales during Q4 because of holidays. So yeah, when I was just like living day to day and most days I was not getting orders, like it's very easy to feel like, wow, I'm doing really, really poorly at this. This is not working out. What am I even doing? Like I didn't expect for the total order numbers per quarter to be so close together, because I had months like June where I got 3 orders and months like August where I only got 2 orders. When you're looking at it and like experiencing it month by month and like day by day and week by week, it can feel like really bad. So it's actually interesting that it's just the way that the orders were dispersed changed a lot over time, like per quarter, but the amount that each quarter had was about the same. Because there were some that I know I felt better and some that I know I felt worse, and maybe it was because like those 20 orders were coming consistently, so it felt like some amount of success, whereas other months were like they were more sporadic and maybe like 1 week I got 5 orders suddenly, and then the next 3 weeks go by and I get no orders, and like those 3 weeks feel really bad to the point where I forget about the week that I had 5 orders. So I do think it's actually helpful that I went back and looked at this and I'm like, wow, maybe things weren't as terrible as I thought they were, if I'm going by like order number. So I feel like ultimately the point of these kinds of videos is talking about the lessons you learned throughout the year. In this moment, now that I've looked at numbers and kind of I'm doing a recap, I do think a big lesson that I've learned now is that it's important to, like, I know the saying is like, take everything day by day, like live in the moment, but actually in this case, it was really important for me to zoom out and like look at the bigger picture. Now I feel a bit better about how the year went than I did when like everything was just in my head rather than like numbers on a piece of paper. So then in that case, I feel like for me, I learned now that I need to actually just take a step back and view things a little different sometimes, because I get very caught up in how I feel on a day-to-day basis. Honestly, I'm kind of the person that like I can have a really good month and maybe the last couple days I'm not feeling well mentally or physically, and it's like all of the good of the past month is just like wiped from my memory and all I remember is the bad, which is something I know I need to work on. Since I think that way, I guess I'm learning that it's important for me to definitely take a step back sometimes and look at the bigger picture. Another lesson that I learned that I feel like I learn every single year and like know every single day is that I really need to stop overthinking every single thing I do, because I think that I go into new ideas and things thinking that if I gather as much information as possible that my odds of success will be higher, but instead I always like end up in the same place of like no matter how much information I've gathered and how like secure I feel in my ideas, it always ends in like, but you don't know how that's gonna go over with other people, which I have no control over. So obviously it's always gonna end the same way in that sense. Yes, brings me to, I think, literally the biggest lesson that I learned for the entire year. So I kind of looked into these principles around the same time. I really felt something shift in my mindset once I kind of absorbed the information. But two things that I don't even remember. I feel like it was maybe like September or October. I just really wanted to focus on my self-discipline because I know that I struggle with just, if I don't feel like doing something, I won't do it. You can't really survive and live that way. And I know that that is something that I really need to work through and get better at. Kind of went down the self-help rabbit hole for a little bit and like read some books and watched some TED Talks and whatnot. Two concepts that like really stood out to me were the locus of control, which is pretty much just the level and the balance for a certain individual of how much control they think they have over what happens to them. I think there's external and internal. If you lean more towards external, you think that you really don't have any control over what happens in your life and that things just happen to you all the time. And when you think that way, you just are more likely to get depressed because you just don't feel like there's anything you can do about circumstances. And on the opposite side, if you have a more internal complex, you think that you do have more control over not necessarily what happens to you, but you at least understand that you have complete control of how you react to the things that happen to you and how those things ultimately affect your life. And I'm not that person. I am, for the most part, like, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to be that person. But for the most part, I am afraid of everything, thinking that everything's out to get me and that it's just more likely that bad things are going to happen to me and there's nothing I can do about it. So that principle, in the sense of like my personal life and business, I feel like is something I've realized I really need to work on, and like not just constantly feeling like life happens to me, because I know how that makes me feel and it makes me feel really shitty. If I can kind of like tweak my mindset to be more on the side of like, you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control what you learned from it, how you perceive it, and all of those things. And I really think that I need to focus on that a lot more. And then the next principle, which is really more of only like a business thing for me, is I think it's Pareto principle. I don't actually know that I'm pronouncing that right, but it's also known as the 80-20 rule, which I'm just going to read the summary of what that means so I don't mess it up. It states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. When I was reading about this, I think was presented as like 80% of your success will come from 20% of your effort. And I think that kind of just like blew my mind. And I think that's really from the standpoint of this feeling that I know I have, but I also think a lot of small business owners have, and just any business owner, I guess. If the effort you put into something didn't work out, it is your fault. And I know that I feel that a lot. If something that I do doesn't work out, which in modern times is like, you have the opportunity to feel that all the time. And like, if I post something on social media for the day and it, in my terms, isn't successful, that's one reason for me to feel like I failed. If I didn't get any orders today, that's another reason to feel like I failed. If I didn't get enough work done today, that's another reason to feel like I failed. And it's just like the opportunities to feel like a failure are often, like they happen all the time. And I also think, like, I don't want to get too into it, but the correlation between social media and small businesses right now is just, it's there. There is a direct correlation between the two. Social media right now has just felt so much of the external locus of control of like, you can put your all into trying to market your business on there, and it does not matter how much effort you put in, like you are not guaranteed any amount of success on there. And I let that belief just completely eat away at me in like all aspects of having a business. Just every day it felt like, well, I'm not going to post anything because no one's gonna see it. I'm not going to make anything because no one's gonna see it. I'm not gonna do anything because no one's gonna want it. Like, it's just constantly this, like, what is the point of doing any of this if the only outcome that happens more often than not is that nobody cares, nobody buys it, nobody sees it. That's just what happens. It has felt to me like this is not how things used to be. Like, we're just living in a time right now where things are so much harder than it used to be, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just you're in your own little predicament right now that the past does not relate to and it doesn't apply to. And then it's just kind of like, well, what do I do? Like, if this is the first time people have had to deal with this kind of business problem, we don't know what we're doing. So for how illogical of a person I am, I really enjoy logic, and I feel like I need very set black and white things to make me feel better. So when I found out about the 80-20 principle and that, like, there's literally like a statistic about success that has spanned through all of time, or at least for how long this principle has existed, but for a long time, that, yeah, has just like existed as a concept for much longer than I've been doing this. And that, like, statistically, if 80% of your success comes from 20% of your effort, and the other 80% of your effort is likely to not get you the results that you want, and that is just statistically what happens, like, that made me feel so much better. And maybe for some people that would not make them feel better, but I think it took away the self-blame aspect to me, like, kind of reframed what I have control over. Because if I'm thinking about things more in statistics than feelings and emotions, then, like, I know that if I don't release this product and take a risk, the only thing I'm guaranteeing is that 100% nobody cares and nobody buys it because nobody knows it exists. If I don't post this thing on Instagram today, 100% no one's gonna see it because I didn't even show it to anybody. And, like, I'm choosing that. I'm controlling that. Nobody's making me do that. I'm choosing to not take the risk that it fails. So in general, I just think that concept and principle has really reframed the way that I think about my business and all business and everything over the past couple months. And I think it's been really helpful in bringing me back into feeling like I have some amount of control of what's happening to me and my business, and, like, getting better at recognizing literally which things I have power over. Accepting when I am 100% sure that I am the one to blame for what's happening, rather than, like, vaguely feeling like this isn't fair, it's probably my fault, I'm not good enough, and just, like, bringing it back to, like, I'm making the active choice right now to not take a risk, or, you know, knowing that those are my only options, is taking a risk or choosing not to, and knowing that when I choose not to, it is 100% likely that I'm going to fail. And I know that's a concept that people talk about a lot, but in these terms, like, it was so much easier for my brain to absorb that information. So yeah, I think that in general, those are, like, the biggest lessons that I took from the year after thinking about everything. And going into 2025, I think, like, my main goal is to just let myself create without so much fear of the unknown, and I'm really hoping that I can do that, and just, like, knowing that statistically the more I create, the more opportunity I'm giving myself to succeed. Throwing out ideas because I'm afraid that they won't work is just shifting things completely out of my favor, whereas if I actually just keep creating, I'm helping myself and I'm helping the odds. So these aren't really lessons, and, like, I get kind of frustrated by analytics trying to decipher helpful things from, like, numbers and statistics. But just looking back at how, like, each month went and what was going on during that time, some of it made sense to me and some of it just is like, I don't really know what to make of this information. This kind of goes with the 80-20 principle. I released 4 new products this year, or last year, and one new full collection. One of those products was an espresso candle. Sold one of those. Then a Sonos bakery candle. I sold 3. I made the wax melt boxes for the holiday season. I sold 1. The folklore mug that I made that you've seen in other videos, I sold 8. For the entire Tortured Poets collection, I sold 68 items, and that includes the candles, the wax melts, the perfume, and the bookmarks. So like altogether, the collection did pretty well, but this just kind of shows like most of the things that I released this year did not do well, but one of them did. So for everything that I released that I felt really bad about myself for, there was at least one thing that went well, and that just kind of follows that statistic. So I try to look at generally the numbers behind like how many orders I got per month and what I did that month, of like if I released something or I had a sale or I posted more on social media, and the only correlations that really likely to me was that in Q4 when I got the 42 orders was because I was having a sale and because it was the holidays. Then my second best time was September, and I got 16 orders in September. That was because I released the Tortured Poets collection. Those were the only correlations that I saw that I was like, this is why I got these orders. Every other time, I would do sales, would not get orders. I tried doing, the most I've ever really done is a 20% off sale. Went through my email subscribers, had it filter out the ones that had never purchased anything from me but had been email subscribers, and I sent those people a 25% coupon, which I never do 25%. Nobody bought anything. So things like that are why I will feel really bad about myself, of like, wow, these things are on the highest sale they have ever been and nobody wants them. You know, other times where I release new things, got even less sales than normal. Like, it's just so easy to find correlations that end with like, I'm the problem, it's me. And that is why I feel like I cannot offer actual financial business advice, and don't even bother going into any dollar amounts of anything, because I have not found a single thing that I know works. Like, having a discount in sale doesn't even mean that anyone's gonna order anything. Like, from the numbers I see, like, it should make more sense, but the sale, I had 2 20% off sales, one earlier in the year and one on the holidays. Nobody ordered anything during the first 20% off sale, but because of the time of year, the second 20% off sale did really well. And like, in that sense, I can know that this sale's doing well because of the time of year. Maybe the rest of the year people just aren't buying things and it's not my fault. Like, I don't know. That's why I don't feel like I can give any advice in that section, because none of it makes any sense to me anyway. So I also tried to do just like a quick wrap up recap thing on Instagram. It just like also highlighted for me that I like still don't even know how to talk about it. When we found out that Archie had cancer, literally none of this felt like it mattered. That's pretty normal, I think, to happen when there is something like that going on in your life. Like, it really shifts priorities happening. I mean, I'm definitely somewhere in between. Like, I felt like doing a recap of the year would be helpful, and also somewhere of like, none of it matters. And like, it doesn't make sense to sit here and be like, everything that I just said for the past 40 or 30 minutes doesn't matter. But I'm just, yeah, I'm in this weird space where like, I know I need to keep moving forward and I need to keep working and keep just living life, but also feeling really stupid about that. I've been through grief before in different ways for different people, and I know that this is just what happens, of like, certain things just don't feel important anymore, and there's just like a guilt of trying to continue things as if life is normal. That's not what I'm doing, but sometimes by just doing something that feels normal, it feels like bad, which I think is like very common when people are grieving. I just like, I feel like trying to plan out things for the year just feels like forgetting him, and that's logically, I know that's not what I'm doing, and like that is not an aim that I have, but like it's just so hard to find the balance between moving on, not moving on, just moving, and just sitting in sadness. I think I've just lost the plot of what I was saying because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to keep doing things and deciding of, do I acknowledge what's going on in my head and that this is really difficult, or do I just, from an outside perspective, act like nothing's happening? And like, I don't know which one's right, and maybe there isn't a right answer, but like it's, I think for me personally, it's just like important that if I do keep working on things, that like I remind myself and like I remind other people that like this is not me being okay with losing Archie, and like this is not me getting over it. Like it's just, it's always there. I think they're just, with sharing things online, it's so hard to understand where the balance and the boundaries are of like, you know, what part of myself do I show other people? I think like my gut is just saying that like I shouldn't lie and act like I can just go on with things and that I'm fine and that I'm not upset. Because I am. I just think that part of why I ever want to share things online is like just so that other people don't feel alone. And if I lie about how I'm feeling, not from the perspective that like I think that I need to, because sharing things online doesn't mean you owe people like a whole dive into your life. Like you don't need to share everything that's going on, but like I think grief is just such a universal experience that like it's not worth it for me to act like it's not happening. I'll try to find a balance between like not talking about it all the time, because I just don't think that's necessary, but also just like being honest about how this feels and how this, I don't know, affects everything. I want to keep creating videos and do more things, but I just felt like it was important to not act like the only thing that matters is business stuff, because it's not. So in summary, 2024 was really hard. Maybe it wasn't as all bad as like it felt during certain times, and like it's nice to go back and look at everything and know that it wasn't that bad, like as bad as I was making the business side of things feel. So yeah, I think that's just the general recap of the year. Again, I'm looking forward to trying new things out this year and everything, but I also know it's gonna be hard. I don't even know how to end this anymore. Again, if you've been following along with any of this and just this channel, thank you. There's a lot more people on here than I thought there would be by this point, and again, I don't even want to think about trying to reach like any numbers this year. I just want to make videos and share things, and like if it gets to people and they see it, then it does, and if it doesn't, then there's still a lot of people that I'm sharing things with. So thank you for that, and I will see you in the next video.